It's 2:17 a.m., and I'm sitting in the living room, listening to Laura sleeping upstairs. Her phone is on the charging station. I look at it, thinking about how much more time she spends with that thing than she spends with me. Lately, it's been like I've been living alone, except for when we sleep together. The only conversations we have are about what to buy for dinner, or if we should take out the trash. I've tried talking to her about it, but she just smiles in that infuriating way of hers, saying things like, "You know how it is? Work's been crazy," or "I haven't been feeling well, maybe I'm coming down with something." But the worst part is that I know she's lying. I don't know how I know, but I just do. It's in the way she avoids eye contact, the way she hesitates before answering. And then there are the other clues, the ones that make me think she's having an affair. She's been staying late at work, but when she comes home, she smells like a different perfume. She's been going to the gym more often, but her clothes aren't sweaty when she gets back. And then there are the strange smiles she gives me, as if she's hiding something. I stand up. "This is stupid," I mutter, but I'm picking it up. The passcode was our anniversary. I thought maybe she changed it, but no. It worked. I opened her messages. The first name on the list was Nathan Reynolds. I didn't know him well, but he worked for a company that partnered with mine. 37 unread messages. Next was James Mitchell, our neighbor. 23 messages. Jesus Christ, I mutter under my breath. And then I see a name I recognize. It's Mark Sullivan. He's my best friend. We've known each other since childhood. 15 messages. The timestamps are spread out over the last several weeks, mostly after hours, but not all of them. I go back to the beginning and open up the messages from Nathan. The last one is from last night at 11:42 p.m. "Miss you already. Tomorrow can't come soon enough." I scroll up, looking through the messages. There are plans to meet up, texts of a sexual nature, photos. The next one is from James. It's more careful, but equally damning. There are references to things I wasn't there for, plans to meet up and have coffee. And then I look at Mark's messages. There's one from this morning. It was sent right before I got home from work. His messages are longer, more detailed, and show a long history of stolen moments. Alex can never know. We need to be more careful. The floor creaks above me. I freeze, listening. Laura is walking across the bedroom floor. I hear her footsteps stop, and then they continue, heading for the stairs. "Alex?" Her voice calls softly down the stairs. "Are you down there?" I should answer. I should do something instead of just standing here holding the evidence of my unraveling life. "Honey?" she calls again, sounding worried. "Yeah," I answer back, and I'm impressed by how calm I seem. Grabbing some water. I quickly and quietly went to the kitchen and filled up a glass with water, using the sound of the faucet to cover up the noise of me putting her phone back on the counter. She came out of the bedroom, wrapped in her silk robe. Her hair was messy, and she looked cute. I wondered how many other men had seen her like that. "You all right?" she asks, and I see her look at her phone, then at me. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep," I say, thinking about work. I take a drink of water I don't need. She hugs me and I can smell her hair. It smells like her shampoo, but also like another man. "Just come back to bed," she says. "In the morning. You can do it in the morning." I agreed and let her guide me to the stairs, not letting on how I took a step back from her, how I was already distancing myself from her. "I love you," she says on the stairs. I wonder how many people she's said it to recently. "I know," I say back. It's easier than lying. She goes back to sleep and I lay awake in bed, thinking about what to do. I had to find out where it was going, what this thing wanted, and how to stop it. After laying in bed for an hour or two, pretending to be asleep, I finally got up after my wife left for work. As soon as I heard her car driving away, I got up and went to the office, bringing my laptop with me. Laura left for work a few hours ago, and I've been sitting at my desk ever since, digging deeper into her lies with each passing minute. I've been looking at our bank account, scrutinizing every transaction, trying to find any inconsistencies that could prove my suspicions right. I'm trying to find out the truth. "Hey, you all right?" the text says. "Laura said you were sick." I look at the name. What did he say again? I think to myself. Oh, right, I have a stomach bug. Taking a personal day. "Do you need anything?" he asks. Too fast. The worry feels toxic now. "I'm okay, thank you." I check our phone records online. There are a lot of calls and texts, but I notice some of them are to Nathan's number, and James's number, and Mark's. "You're being paranoid," I say to myself. But the engineer in me knows that's not true. Data doesn't lie. People do. I opened Facebook and went to Laura's profile page. She had posted a picture of the four of us from a few weeks ago at a charity gala which I hadn't attended. I had been too busy with work at that time to go. I clicked on the photo and it opened up, showing Nathan and James on either side of her. Mark was at the other end, looking at her instead of the camera. My phone rang again. This time it was Laura. "You doing okay, babe?" I sighed. "A little. I might work from home today." "Should I pick up soup from your favorite spot? It must be close to where Nathan works." I go over the phone records again and see that she called him 20 minutes earlier. "Nah, just ordered takeout, man." 3 little dots appear on the screen, then disappear, then reappear. "Okay, don't work too hard. Love you." I don't respond to that and put the phone down. I see I have made a search for divorce lawyers in my browser history at 4 a.m. last night. I do a new search for divorce lawyers and start printing out all the necessary documents. Once I have everything I need, I put it all in a folder. My phone rings. "Alex Cole," I respond. "Alex, this is Jennifer from HR. Should I mark you down as taking a sick day?" I look down at the file in my hands. "Actually, I was wondering if I could take a few days off. I have a family issue I need to deal with." "Sure thing. Is everything all right?" "Yeah, something's come up," I say, trying to inject a bit of regularity in my voice. "I'll send the form through." I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. A spider was crawling up in the corner, building a web. I always found it interesting to watch them work. They were so methodical and patient, waiting for their opportunity. The computer dinged, and I saw an email had arrived from Nathan's office. He was inviting me to a meeting for next week. I accepted and saw his picture at the bottom of the email. His face was smug and proud, his smile confident. He looked like a man who was on top of the world. It made me want to knock him down a peg. Going back to my email, I looked at the divorce lawyers' addresses I had written down. The first one offered free consultations, so I sent them a message. Looking out the window, I saw my neighbor James was getting his mail. He waved at me, and I waved back. I wondered if he was going to meet Laura for coffee. That was what the texts had said they were doing later. Although I suspected coffee was a euphemism for something else. Another text came in from Mark. "Drinks tonight? Might help with the stomach bug." I didn't like the way he winked at me in his text. It made me feel like he knew what was going on, but that was impossible, wasn't it? "Still not feeling great. Maybe tomorrow," I replied. Going back to my desk, I opened up the printer tray and took out the last few sheets of paper. I organized them by date, putting them in chronological order. As I did this, I noticed a pattern. Laura would go out with each of these men at certain times and for certain activities, and often she would be seeing one of them while we were all out at the bar together. I wondered how that worked. Maybe there were some bathroom hookups. It wouldn't surprise me. The last page I had printed out was a picture. It was a group photo of all of us at our Christmas party last year. Laura was in the middle, surrounded by those 3 men. Me and the ones she was having affairs with. Her arms were around all of us, and she looked so happy, like she had everything she wanted. I slid the picture into the folder and checked the time. Laura wouldn't be home for another few hours. I had plenty of time to make more phone calls. I picked up the phone and began to dial. The spider in the corner of the room had finished its web. It was just sitting there now, waiting for its prey to wander into its trap. I knew exactly how it felt. I sat at my desk for a long time after that, watching the shadows grow longer and the afternoon turn to evening. The sunset was a deep crimson, and it reminded me of blood. Or maybe betrayal. I wasn't sure which. But it was beautiful in its own way. And it made me feel a little bit better about everything that had happened. There was still beauty in the world, even if it was tinged with darkness. After several hours of phone calls and internet searches, I was now looking at some very expensive and very high-tech spy equipment. I had a spider web on the corner of my office ceiling. The light of the rising sun revealed it to me for the first time. I'd been on my computer for an hour by that point, ordering a bunch of surveillance equipment from Amazon. It felt wrong to do that, but I needed to know if my wife was cheating on me. A couple hours later, the doorbell rang. "Thanks, man. Enjoy your evening," he says, smiling. "You too," I say back, as I begin to think about where I should put them in the house. I unpacked the gear in my office to make sure everything was working. The cameras were tiny, not much larger than a button, and the voice recorders could fit in the palm of my hand. I received a text from Laura. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." "That's okay, have a good one," I reply, thankful for the extension. I started with the bedroom, placing one of the cameras inside the old clock Laura had insisted on keeping on her bedside table. I had to run a few wires through the clock's mechanism, but I managed to get it done without too much trouble. The second camera went inside a vase in the hallway, facing the stairs. As I worked, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I looked the same as always, but there was something different in my eyes, something cold and calculating. My phone buzzed again. It was Mark. "Heard Laura's working late. Want to grab that drink now?" "Not feeling too well," I answer back. What if he's with her right now? The living room is a bit trickier, but I managed to make it work. I plant one recorder behind the soundbar of the TV and another one in the plant by the window. The kitchen is even more complicated than the living room. I'm in the process of hiding a camera in the light fixture when I hear a car door slam outside. I peek out the window and see James getting home from his run. He stops by the mailbox, looking over at my house. I duck out of view and wait until I hear his door slam shut before continuing. "Don't get paranoid, Cole," I whisper to myself, but I keep going, working faster. I was just putting the last one in the light fixture in the foyer when I heard the doorbell ring. "Alex?" James knocks at the door. "You home?" I thought about not answering, but that might make him suspicious, I realized. I climbed down the ladder, hid everything, and opened the door. "Hey," I say, attempting to appear sickly. "Hey man, just wanted to see how you're doing," James says. "Laura said you were sick." He says her name like it just comes naturally. "You got sick or something?" I say. "Okay, maybe next time." "Yeah, something I ate," I say, slumped in the doorway. "I'll get you tomorrow." "All right, well, if you need any help." He points over his shoulder at his house. No, I'm okay, thanks." Once the man gets out of here, I get to work. By the end of the day, I've installed cameras in every room of our house. I've connected them to the internet so that I can watch the feeds from my computer at work and my cell phone. No one but me can access them. Only I have the username and the password. When I'm finally done, I'm sitting in the living room, trying out the cameras on my laptop. At that moment, Laura comes home with dinner from a restaurant. "Hey babe," she says, putting the bags on the table. "You feeling okay?" "Yeah," I lie. "How was your day?" "Exhausting. The Richardson account is giving me trouble." She opens the bags. "I got a bunch of soup if you wanted some." I notice a smudge of lipstick, a wrinkle in her blouse. "Thanks," I say, accepting the soup container. "I'll try to eat a little." We eat at the kitchen island, and I watch Laura as she talks about her day. "James came over, right?" she asks, as if it's no big deal. "Yeah, he dropped in. That's good of him." She has that knowing smile that I despise. Laura went upstairs to take a shower. I opened my laptop and enabled all the video feeds. Several camera windows opened. In one of them, I could see Laura in the bedroom picking out her clothes. In another, I could see myself sitting at the kitchen island, staring into the bright screen of my laptop. On my phone, I got a text from Nathan. "Thanks for the project outline. Let's discuss this over lunch tomorrow." I couldn't help but laugh. "What's funny?" Laura asks from upstairs. "It's just a meme," I answer, looking at her choppy face on my laptop. Afterward, I heard the shower start running. While she was doing that, I checked to make sure all the microphones and cameras I'd set up were working. They were all hooked up to my computer and were recording everything, sending all the video and audio to the cloud for safekeeping. I wanted to be sure I had a backup in case anything happened. When the shower stopped, I closed my laptop and went back to the living room. I sat down in my armchair and waited for Laura to come down. It didn't take long. "Are you coming to bed?" she says. "Yeah, in a minute," I say, grabbing a book that I've already read 100 times. "Just want to finish this chapter." She kisses me on the forehead and goes upstairs. I look after her, knowing she's being recorded in the cloud, her lies from now on being registered. I sit in the dark and listen to the silence. No, I think to myself, I'm not the only one waiting for something to get caught in my web. Now it was only a matter of time. I stay up all night, reading my book, and when the sun slowly rises, I finally get up and go to bed. After 3 days, the first recordings are ready for me, and I head to my office to see what they have picked up. I'm nervous and still tired from my lack of sleep, but I have to know. The first video file was from 3 days ago. I sat down at my computer and pressed play. I felt sick to my stomach knowing what was about to happen. Nathan, stop. Someone might see. It was Laura's voice. Your husband's at that conference in Denver, Nathan's voice says, like honey. And I've missed you. I find the footage from the kitchen, where he's lifting up her shirt and she's sitting on the counter. The same counter my wife and I eat breakfast on every morning. A new spreadsheet was needed for this, I realized, so I started one for the day, Tuesday, 2:17 p.m., kitchen encounter with NR. Then I watched more. There was a lot of footage to go through. I found him on the footage from yesterday. He came over in the early afternoon. As soon as he was through the door, he was all over her. The coffee shop was busy, he says on the tape. This is better. Way better, Laura answers, and I notice the way she touches his arm, the same way she did in that Facebook picture. I have a spreadsheet where I keep track of everything, and the list is getting long. Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. JM visit, duration 47 minutes. Thursday at 8:45 p.m. Phone call with NR, explicit content. Friday at 3:20 p.m. Meeting with MS at house bedroom. I make a special note of Mark's name. He was my friend, and this makes it feel even worse. I start up a new spreadsheet just for him. Just then, my phone rang. It was Laura. Out with clients tonight for dinner. Don't wait up. I take out my phone and look at the credit card app. She's already gone to the bar at a fancy hotel downtown. All right, have fun with your clients, I text him back, continuing to fill out my spreadsheet. Later in the day, I was scrolling through our bank statements and I noticed the same charges he had mentioned. A few $100s here for a hotel bar, another few hundred there for lingerie, a few hundred more for dinners when she was supposedly working late. And each one of them lined up with a time and date from the videos. There was no denying it. I was about to confront her when my phone rang. It was Mark. Hey man, it's been a while, he says in the fake friendly tone that I've now twigged to. Yeah, the Peterson Project, I respond, while watching a clip of him making out with my wife in our hallway. Laura says you've been busy. We should hang out again soon. I added the call to the timeline. Maybe next week, I said. When I hung up, I checked our shared cloud storage. Laura was smart enough to delete her photos, but I could still access everything from the backup folder. There were dozens of photos and text messages sent to 3 different men. I printed everything out. It took a while. I gathered it all in a folder together with the bank statements, phone records, and all the other evidence. I wrote insurance on it with a black marker. My phone buzzed again. Nathan. Meeting tomorrow at 10? Can't wait, I say, adding a new security camera to my shopping cart. I hear the sound of a car door closing. I look out the window and see Laura getting into her BMW. She checks her makeup in the mirror and then pulls out her phone. A moment later, mine starts to ring. Going into meetings, love you. I opened the app on my phone to see where she was going and saw she was heading for Nathan's neighborhood. Drive safe, I text back, opening up another video file. I watched for hours, seeing her change clothes, use different perfumes, make phone calls from inside the guest bathroom. It was all carefully documented, categorized, and saved for the future. And it all culminated with a single page which I printed out, a detailed timeline of the affairs, color-coded by person. My phone buzzed, and I saw it was a text message from James. Your sprinkler is on. Should I go take a look? I watched him as he stood at my kitchen window, looking in. Don't worry, it's on a timer, I respond, as I make a note of his attempt. I looked at the clock. It was getting late. Laura was still at the hotel, according to her phone's GPS location. She was probably getting ready for bed, I figured. I read through the information I had on her one more time, just to make sure I hadn't missed anything. She had burned a lot of bridges, and didn't expect anyone to look into her history, but I had found a lot of evidence anyway. After I put my phone down, I went and checked her location again. She was still at the hotel. I packed up the papers and put them in the drawer where Laura had found my gun. As I stood there, looking at the drawer, I thought about the fact that I had to go to work tomorrow and face Nathan. I had to go outside and say hi to James when I picked up the mail. I had to decline another invitation for a drink with Mark, all the while knowing what I knew about them. I had them all in the palm of my hand, and they didn't even know it. I sat down on the couch again and picked up my phone. Laura had sent me a text message saying she would be home late, but that I shouldn't wait up for her. I wrote her back, telling her I would go to bed. I wanted to add something else, something more clever, but I couldn't think of anything. Instead, I just told her good night. There was a spider in the corner of the room. It had caught a fly in its web, and it was busy wrapping it up in silk. I knew exactly how that spider felt. It was a lot of work, preparing the trap, but once it was set, all you had to do was wait. I left early in the morning, before Laura got home. I didn't want to see her, and I didn't want to be there when she woke up. I didn't want to be in the house at all. I drove over to David's house with the papers in the seat next to me. It was a long drive, and it gave me a lot of time to think. I wondered if I was doing the right thing, but I couldn't go on like this, keeping it to myself. I needed to tell someone. The morning light came in through the windows in David's kitchen as I sat down at the table, placing the manila folder down in front of me. I didn't open it just yet. Sarah put 3 mugs down on the counter, then poured coffee for each of us. "You're freaking us out, man," David says, standing by the fridge. My big brother. I've been able to count on him in the past, but this feels different. "Coffee first," I reply, waiting for the last bit to drip into the pot. Sarah poured 3 cups, adding cream to her own and David's, and leaving mine black. It felt strange to be doing this, knowing what I was about to say. "Sit down," I order them, pulling out one of their kitchen chairs. "Please." They exchange a brief glance before sitting down. The folder sits on the table between us. "Whatever it is," David begins, "we're here. Laura is cheating on me," I interject, not allowing him to finish. "She is cheating on me with Nathan from work, with James from next door, and with Mark." Silence. "Mark?" Sarah asks. "Our Mark? Your best friend Mark?" I open the folder on my desk. These are the credit card bills, hotel receipts, phone records, and everything else I found out over the last couple weeks. I placed a few photographs on the desk. David picked one up. "Jesus Christ, Alex. There's more," I say. "Much more." She reached over and touched my arm. "How long have you known?" "I found the first clues 3 weeks ago. I started documenting it 2 weeks ago. I installed the cameras last week." "Cameras?" David looks up, startled. "Alex, that's..." "Perfectly fine," I interrupt. "I looked it up. My house, my property." Sarah began going through the financial papers, analyzing them as if they were a patient's medical records. She quickly saw that this had been going on for a long time. 8 months that I can prove," I reply, drinking the coffee that's gone cold. "Maybe more." He stood up, pacing the kitchen. "I'll kill them, all of them, starting with Mark, that backstabbing son of a bee." "David," Sarah cuts in gently, but her hands have gripped her coffee mug a little tighter. "I want you guys to relax," I say, surprised at how composed I am. "I have a plan." "A plan?" David pauses in his tracks. "What kind of plan?" I pick up a paper, my consultation note from my divorce lawyer, and show it to her. "I'm preparing a case. The cameras are still up. I want this to be rock solid when I finally make a move." "Did you talk to her about it?" Sarah asks. "No, she doesn't know that I know. None of them do." David sits back down and says, "This is... Jesus, Alex. How do you even function?" "Engineer brain," I say, offering a half smile that probably looks more like a wince. "Deconstruct the problem into small pieces. Collect information, assess, formulate the action plan." She wiped at her eyes. "I always thought Laura was... she was always so..." "Perfect," I say. "That's what you wanted, right? To be the perfect wife, the perfect neighbor, the perfect..." My voice cracked, and I felt her arms around me, and a moment later, I was sobbing for the first time since this whole thing had begun. "You're safe, man," David says, his hand on my shoulder. "We're here for you." I pulled away after a minute, wiping my eyes with my sleeve. "Don't tell anybody about this. At least not yet," I said. "Yeah," Sarah agrees. "But Alex, you can't go on like this. Watching, acting, it's not good for you." "Just until I'm ready," I say, stacking the papers with shaky hands. "The lawyer says it has to be the right time." He picked up another picture, this time of Laura and Nathan together in the kitchen of my house. "When was this taken?" "Very soon. I'm meeting with her lawyer tomorrow to finalize the plan." Sarah began to collect the evidence, helping me put it back in the folder. "When it happens, you'll stay here. Do you understand me?" I nodded. "There's one more thing." They watched me as I took out my phone. I pulled up the secret server where the videos streamed live 24/7. "Make sure you have copies of these too," I tell them, showing them the encrypted files and how to access them, just in case. He saved the access information and gave me a look. "You think they will?" "I think if someone's willing to go this far with a lie, they're capable of absolutely anything." Sarah took my hand and gave it a squeeze. "We'll help you get through this, okay?" I checked my phone. Laura had texted me. "Miss you." Busy day at the office ahead, I opened up the GPS tracker. She was at Nathan's apartment. "Okay, I need to get going," I say, getting to my feet and grabbing the folder. Laura thinks I'm having a meeting with a supplier. David gave me a big hug, saying, "Call us, anytime." "We really do," Sarah says, giving me a hug next. I hesitate at the door, turning back to them. "Thank you for believing me, for everything. Family," David says. I drove home feeling like a weight was lifted from my shoulders, but also as if it had been replaced with a different one. I had the folder sitting next to me in the passenger seat. My phone buzzed again with another text from Mark, asking if I wanted to come over on the weekend to watch a baseball game. I didn't bother responding to it. The game was almost over. Just a few more pieces to put into place. And now I had some help. I pulled into my driveway and saw James looking at me from across the street, pretending to check his mail. I couldn't wait to find out what he had to say. It took me a few minutes to get back to my house and grab the folder. After that, I drove over to Jennifer and Mike's house. They lived in a different subdivision from us, a quieter one with older trees and less traffic. I wasn't looking forward to this conversation, but I had to have it. Laura had been friends with Jennifer and Mike, and I had to tell them what I knew. I had to get their perspective on everything, and to do that, I needed to show them what I had found. I pulled into their driveway and parked. I had the second folder in the passenger seat next to me, and I picked it up and got out of the car. It was identical to the one in the back seat which I had shown to David and Sarah. The sun was beginning to set in the west, shining through the living room windows of Jennifer and Mike's house. I had a yellow envelope sitting on the table in front of me, just like the one I had shown to David and Sarah earlier that day. "Okay, I have something to tell you guys," I say, trying to ignore the knots in my stomach. "But you have to promise me you won't tell anyone else." She looked worried now. I remembered she used to be close friends with Laura. They used to do yoga on Saturdays together, and she didn't know about all of this yet. "You're scaring me, Alex," she said. Mike put his beer down, and I could see his police detective instincts kicking in. He was as serious as a heart attack. "Whatever it is, man, we're here." I sighed, trying to hold back tears as I said, "Laura's been cheating on me, with Nathan Reynolds, James Mitchell, and Mark Sullivan." There was a stunned silence. Jennifer put her hand over her mouth. "That's a pretty big accusation," Mike says, slipping into his detective voice. "You sure?" I opened up a folder and laid out the contents, showing them to her. Bank statements, phone records, pictures from our own security cameras. She picked up one of the photographs and looked at it. "When did this start?" 8 months that I know of." Mike looked through the papers. "This is very detailed." "I'm an engineer," I say, forcing a grin. "I like to collect data." "Mark," says Jennifer, looking at a picture that seems to confirm the worst. We had dinner with these people last month." "I know," I say. He got up and began to pace the room. "What are you going to do?" "That's part of the reason I'm here. I need allies, people who can help me manage how all of this is released." Jennifer wiped tears from her eyes. "Of course, whatever you need." "And here's the divorce agreement," I say, holding up a second sheet. "I have to be careful. I need to ensure the truth gets out through the right people." He nodded. "A controlled burn." "Yeah, people will know, and I just want to control how that works." "Sarah from the book club," Jennifer pipes up, "and Rachel from the neighborhood association. They'll be good for this." "Lisa and John," Mike chimes in. "John's known you since college." I write a few things down, trying to understand the social network. "But don't do anything rash. Don't make a scene. Just tell a few people you trust and let the truth spread on its own." Just as I said that, I got a text from Laura. She wanted to know if I wanted to hang out with her and Mark's wife Beth during the weekend. "Wow," Jennifer says, looking at the text. "What a fucking bitch." "I'm used to it," I reply, even though it still stings. Mike sat back down, looking concerned. "You've got a place to stay when it all comes out?" "David and Sarah's. They know." "And you'll always have a place here." "One more thing," I say, showing them the footage on my phone. "Back everything up. It's for your own protection." "Smart," said Mike, gritting his teeth. "Very smart." "When are you gonna—" Jennifer starts. "Soon. The lawyer's getting it all set up." I look at my watch. I should get going. Laura thinks I'm out at a work dinner tonight. They walk me to the door, Jennifer giving me a long hug and Mike squeezing my shoulder. We're going to start phoning around tomorrow, Jennifer says, discreetly. Thanks, I say, feeling their love for me. When I'm on the way home, I see that I have 3 missed calls from Mark. The spider's web is growing, I think. Soon it will be large enough to catch everything in its threads. The night is rough. I don't sleep well. I try to prepare myself for tomorrow in every possible way. I imagine every possible worst-case scenario and try to come up with plans for how to handle them. When I wake up, I have played out what I will do in my head several times. I put the flash drive in my pocket, take a shower, and get dressed. I keep thinking about what Jennifer said and about Mike's calm confidence. It gives me the courage to go through with my plan. Mark's missed calls from yesterday are still on my mind. The sunlight is harsh and cold this morning. The next day, I packed up a USB drive with some of the evidence I had collected. I didn't want to give them everything, but I wanted to give them enough to get the ball rolling. I drove to the office, my heart pounding in my chest, and flashed my ID badge for the security guard. Perfect for what I have planned, I say, somehow keeping my voice calm. I guess I'll go see HR to check if they have any answers. It's still a bit early, but I know Margaret Chen always comes in around 7 a.m. I knock on her door. Come, she says. She looked up from her computer, and I must have had a strange look on my face because she asked me if everything was okay. No, I say simply, shutting the door. And what I'm going to show you in a minute is not going to make it better. I took the USB drive out from my bag and laid it on her desk, saying, "This contains proof of Nathan Reynolds having an affair with Laura Cole." "Laura? You mean your wife?" "I am, and if you're about to ask, yes, I'm sure." She picked it up like it might bite her. "You realize what you're asking me to do, right? There's photographic evidence with dates, email correspondence, hotel receipts on company credit cards. It's all corroborated." She inserted it into her laptop, and we looked through the files together. "Wow, there's a lot here. There's a lot more, but I think this'll suffice for HR." She looks up at me with a bit of surprise. "Have you called legal?" "My lawyer has the full Monty. This is just the work-related stuff that needs to be dealt with." The sound of the air conditioning continued to fill the room as she continued to look through the evidence. "We're going to have to file a report," she finally says. "That's fine. I want to be listed as anonymous in the report." She nodded, reaching for her phone. "Sure, I will, although people will probably—" "Let them wonder. I just want this done officially." Just then my phone buzzed. It was Nathan asking for a project meeting. "I should get going," I say, rising to my feet. "I'm known for being on time." Just as I was about to leave, Margaret's voice called out from behind me. "Alex, I'm sorry." "That's all right. You're just doing your job. So am I." It took some time for the news to get around, but by lunch there were rumors spreading. By the mid-afternoon, I watched Nathan get called into HR. I looked at my phone and saw a message from Laura. It said, "Lunch today? I miss you. Sorry, busy, due date." I respond, as Nathan exits the HR office looking a lot more flustered. I get several more emails throughout the day. There are a few meetings as well, and I go to them, trying to act normal. But inside I'm watching the numbers climb. Around 3 o'clock, Sarah from accounting stops in to see me. "Hey Alex, did you happen to—" "The quarterly reports? Already sent 'em over. Anything else?" She looked like she wanted to say something else, but my face told her to keep it to herself. "That's all," she said. "Thanks." By 5 o'clock, things were different around the office. Nathan wasn't back yet, and I hadn't heard from him. Laura tried to call me a couple of times, but I ignored her. I was just getting ready to leave when Jennifer from marketing came to my door. "I heard," she says. "Are you okay?" Okay is relative. She walked in and closed the door. "Everyone's talking about it. Nathan's on leave pending an investigation." "HR stuff," I respond, as I pile more things into my bag. "Laura called the office, asking to speak to you." I stopped stapling for a second. "Oh, did she?" "Alex," Jennifer begins, but I raise my hand. "I get it. Just don't worry about it, okay?" The whole drive home I feel like I'm in a dream. My phone is ringing. It's Laura, wondering why I'm not answering her calls. I get home and park the car. Laura isn't home from work yet. I see James in his garden, pretending he doesn't see me. I pour myself a glass of whiskey and sit down at my desk. I turn on my computer and look at the live footage from the hidden cameras. The house is empty, waiting for something to happen. My phone rings again. Laura. "Something terrible is going on at work. Nathan is suspended. Awful rumors are being spread. Call me. I take a drink of scotch and notice a spider in the corner of the room, spinning a web. I hear the front door open. Laura's home early. Alex? She calls, a little more strained than normal. You home? I down the last of my drink and adjust my tie. In my office. A moment later, she was coming down the stairs, and I could hear the difference in her step. The spider crawled back into the corner of its web, waiting. I know how it felt. For the next 3 days, I was busy trying to save my job. Laura and I didn't talk much during that time, but when the weekend came, we had to go to a party in the neighborhood. I knew the neighbors had found out about the scandal and that they would want to know all the details when they saw us, but Laura and I still hadn't been able to talk things through. The block party is a cacophony of chatter and laughter, trying to inject a sense of normalcy into what has become anything but normal. I've positioned myself at the edge of the gathering, far enough away from both Laura and James to keep them from seeing me. Alex! Rachel Thompson calls me over, and I know she'll be the perfect person to help me with what I have to do next. We haven't seen you at one of these in a while. I know, I reply, taking the glass of wine she hands me. Work's been exciting, busy. She whispered, I heard about the suspension at your company. Wasn't it your department? I took a sip of my wine and said, Yes, that was unfortunate, but not surprising. Really? She asks, feigning surprise. Yeah, you never really know who you can trust, huh? I reply, glancing over at James, who's pouring Laura another drink. Rachel noticed my look and asked, What are you saying, Alex? Only that matters of the heart rarely remain hidden for long. I let the word affairs sink in, hoping she wouldn't think too much of my mistake. Affairs, she says, clutching her wine glass. You don't think a lot of things are caught on tape these days, I say, loudly enough for Carol Meyer to hear from her spot by the cheese plate. She looked up at them as the transmission began. Oh, fuck, Rachel says, putting it together. James and... I nodded and took a sip of my wine. But they're both... She has her phone in her hand already. Married? Yes, that's why it's especially disappointing. Laura laughed at something James said to her, and I glanced at my watch. Just a few more minutes until the first text messages would begin to go out. Does Sarah know? Carol asks, somehow having gotten much closer to us in a very short amount of time. I think Jennifer is telling her right now, I say, looking over to where James's wife is now talking to Jennifer on the other side of the yard. The mood changes everywhere. Alex, Mike says, materializing at my side, a detective's intuition feeling something off. Now's the right time for this? Yeah, now's a great time, I say, noticing that Sarah has just finished a call with Jennifer and is looking up. She looks at her husband, who is still talking to Laura. Here we go, I say, as Sarah begins approaching them. James, Sarah says, we need to talk, right now. Everyone stopped talking. Laura looked over to Sarah, realizing something was wrong. Can it wait, honey? James says, a hint of panic in his voice. We were, just talking about the new landscaping. No, it can't, Sarah says, her voice shaking. Jennifer just showed me some very interesting photos. It went deathly quiet. What photos? Laura asks, less convincing than usual. I pretend to get more wine and step closer. James glances between Sarah and Laura, his composure faltering. Sarah, he says, but she interrupts him. Don't, just don't. She looks at Laura. How could you? How could you both? People were murmuring now, looking surprised, telling each other what they had just learned. Laura looked around at everyone, then her eyes settled on me. I think maybe it's time for us to go, James says to Sarah. Oh, we're going, Sarah replies, raising her voice, just not with each other. Laura set her glass down and stood up. I should... Yes, you should, Carol says, her voice icy as she backs away from him, leaving as much space between them as she can. More people moved out of her way as she walked out onto the street. James followed Sarah down the road back to their house. Right, Rachel says, breaking the silence. So that's what the morning jogs were all about. A few laughs. I downed the rest of my wine and watched Laura disappear into the night. Alex, Jennifer says, putting a hand on my shoulder. You want to stay at my place? You shouldn't be alone. Yeah, I respond, making sure I'm heard. I have to meet with my lawyer first thing, so I should probably read up. The pieces had fallen into place. I could see it in their eyes. They understood the connection between the suspension at work, the affair, and my calm demeanor. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Laura. "We need to talk, please." I didn't reply. Instead, I put the phone back in my jacket and said goodbye to my neighbors. They gave me a look of pity as I left. I didn't care. I had made sure to record everything that happened. I didn't know how to use it yet, but I wanted to be prepared. There was still one more thing that needed to be done before I could confront Laura. I had to make sure she knew that I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I went home and sat down in my office. I looked out the window and saw Laura's car pulling into the driveway. She got out of the car and walked up to the front door. I watched her for a moment before I turned away. One thread down, I thought. 2 more to go. 3 days later. I've been waiting for this day ever since I found out about the affair. I was lucky that the opportunity came this soon. I've arranged things so that everyone in my family will be present. I want them to see the look on Laura's face when I confront her. I want them to see the shock and the fear. I've also made sure that Mark will be at the dinner table so that I can confront him as well. I want to see his reaction when he realizes that I know everything. Laura has been trying to talk to me ever since that night at the block party, but I've ignored her. I didn't want to say anything until I had everything planned out. As I drive to my parents' house, I can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I know that I'm going to get my revenge, and I can't wait to see how it all turns out. I'm going to make sure that Laura and Mark never forget this day. It was Sunday evening, and I was sitting at the dining room table with my family in my parents' house. Laura was next to me, and Mark was across from us. "The roast is delicious, Ellen," Laura says to my mom, though I can hear the faintest hint of artifice in her delivery. "Thank you, sweetie," my mom replies. She's on to me. Moms always know when something's up. My dad cleared his throat in the awkward silence and said, "Mark, how's that new project of yours coming along?" "It's, going well," Mark replies, a little awkwardly. "We're ahead of schedule, actually." I take a sip of wine, recalling the video from Tuesday afternoon when he was meant to be at that project site. The final USB drive in my pocket weighs heavily on my mind. "Actually, that reminds me," I said, putting my glass back down. "I've been working on a project of my own." Laura stopped eating and looked at me. I recognized that way of speaking. "Oh?" my sister Rachel asks, already leaning forward in her seat at the change in tone. "Yes, it's a sort of study of human behavior." I pull out the drive from my jacket. "Does anyone want to watch?" The grip on Mark's knife tightened. "Alex," Laura says, "maybe this isn't the right time." "No, it's the perfect time." I plug the drive into the digital photo frame on the side table, the one my mom uses to display family pictures. "I have a little presentation for you." The first photo showed Mark coming into the house. "That's funny," I continue conversationally, "because I could have sworn you were at that project site that day, Mark." The room went silent. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. "What is this?" Dad asks, but it sounds like he knows. The next image appears. Laura greeting Mark at our door, dressed in much less than she is now. "Alex, don't," Laura begs. "It's amazing what you start to notice once you pay attention," I say, clicking through the photos one by one. Thursday afternoons, Monday mornings, the occasional Sunday night, when Beth thinks you're at the gym. Isn't that right, Mark? "Beth isn't here tonight. I planned it that way." "Jesus Christ," Rachel says. "How long?" Mom asks. 8 months, at a minimum, but I think it's been longer. Mark stood up from the table, saying, "I can explain." "Can you?" I turned to face him fully. "Can you explain why my best friend since childhood decided to sleep with my wife? I'd love to hear that explanation." We didn't mean," Laura starts. "To get caught?" I finish for her. "No, I suppose you didn't. Just like you didn't mean to get caught with Nathan, or James." Everyone gasped at the revelation. "Nathan and James?" Rachel shrieks. "Makes sense why I was suspended from work now, doesn't it?" I say to Dad, who is sitting blank-faced at the head of the table. Laura stood up, knocking over her chair. "I need to go outside." "Be my guest," I tell them. "But for the record, the security cameras are on at the house, if you were looking to take anything." "Alex," Mark says, approaching me with his hands up. "We can work through this." "As brothers?" I say softly. "Isn't that what you said we were at my wedding, when you were my best man?" The photo changed, showing Mark and Laura in my bed at 3:17 p.m. that same day. My mom got up from her seat. "I think you two should go." "Ellen?" Laura says. "No, Mom is ice cold. Leave." Laura grabbed her purse and headed for the door in a hurry. Mark went after her, but stopped beside me for a second. If you say you're sorry again, I interrupted, I may forget that our parents are watching. He looks deflated and leaves. I hear the front door shut behind him. Silence in the dining room. I'll make coffee, Mom says eventually, picking up plates with trembling hands. I'll help. Rachel goes with her to the kitchen, looking back at me anxiously. He sits down again, staring into his wine glass. The lawyer's got it all, I tell her. Papers will be filed in the morning. He nodded slowly. Good. Sorry about the food. Don't be. He glances up at me, his eyes colder than ever. Some things should be brought into the light. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. It was most likely Laura. You're staying over tonight, Dad says. He's not asking. Okay. When Laura left, I saw her drive off in her car through the window. Mark left a couple of minutes later. The sky was purple. My phone vibrated. It was Beth. Rachel must have told her. A spider's web in the corner of the living room bathed in the warm sunlight. It reminded me of the thread I had cut loose. Now it was time to pick up the pieces. I spent 3 weeks in a hotel, eating microwave meals, before I finally moved into my new apartment. I ignored the phone calls and let Laura's lawyers handle the situation. It took a while, but I eventually got back on my feet. I even got a promotion at my job at Reynolds and Partners. I had just come into work at my new office, the one that Nathan used to have before the incident. His things had been removed, and he left the company shortly after everything came to light. I felt a bit bad about it since I was the one who exposed him, but at the same time, I had done the right thing. He was a pervert and didn't belong at Reynolds and Partners. Still, it was hard to get used to the way people looked at me now, like I was a hero or a snitch. My phone rang as I sat down at my desk, and I saw it was Laura's lawyer. I let it go to voicemail, same as I had done for the past 3 weeks. Mr. Cole, it's my new assistant, Claire. Mrs. Mitchell is here to see you. Sarah, James's soon-to-be ex-wife. Let her in. She looks a bit different now, as if she's been hardened by tragedy. She's holding a manila folder. I found more, she says, laying a folder down on my desk. Photos, hotel receipts, all the way back to last Christmas. I open it up and say, You didn't have to bring these. Yeah, I did. They need to know what they took away from me. I see Laura walking through the lobby outside my office. She's here for her final meeting. Have you talked to James? I ask, even though I know the answer. Just through attorneys. He's at his brother's place in Phoenix. There's a knock at my office door, and I go to answer it. Hey, sorry to bother you, but, Laura's apparently here for her exit interview, and she wants to see you first. She laughed. It was a laugh I didn't like, a laugh that could cut glass. The nerve, she said. Just let HR know to go ahead, I say to Jennifer. I have no further comments for the record. Laura goes into the HR room. For the first time, I see her with her hair slightly out of place and a different handbag. Laura's been officially voted out of the neighborhood association, Sarah says, standing by the window, looking out at Laura. She's no longer allowed to serve as the head of the events committee. Yeah, Rachel told me. And Beth's kicking Mark out. She's divorcing him. Apparently he's been living in extended stays ever since your parents' dinner. There was a meeting that had just let out, and people walked by my office on their way back to their own. I could see them looking at me out of the corner of their eyes, trying not to let it be obvious. No one wanted to be caught staring at the guy whose wife had ruined 3 people's jobs and 2 marriages. Alex, Sarah asks in a gentler tone, are you okay? I fiddle with my cactus some more, trying to find a way to express my feelings. I sleep better now. Is that weird? Not weird. Truth is good like that. I got a text from my sister, Rachel. Mom wants to know if you'll come for dinner on Sunday. Laura has finally moved out of your old room. Anyway, about truth, Sarah says, getting up and grabbing her purse. James is being blackballed by his company. Turns out it doesn't look so good on LinkedIn to sleep with your neighbor's wife. Or your co-workers, I say as Laura comes out of HR, clutching a tissue. Well, I should get going. Beth and I have a spa day planned together. Recovery therapy, she called it. I walk Sarah to the elevator, knowing people are going to be talking about this. Alex? Sarah stops before she enters the elevator. Thanks for everything. I just exposed the truth. I watch Laura leave the building from my office. I check her LinkedIn page. It now says she was fired from her position, suspected of ethical violations, and pending further investigation. Claire brings me my coffee. Mr. Button, the moving company just called. They've emptied out your previous home. Thanks, Claire. The new condo downtown feels emptier than the house, but the walls don't lie. My phone rings again. Mark's number. Do you want me to block his number? Claire asks, seeing the look on my face. Nah, some calls are good for perspective. Thinking about what happened to Mark and Laura and James, I shake my head. I wonder if they'll be able to move the house. Your 3 o'clock is here, Claire says, the merger team from Stanley and Wright. I adjust my tie, close the Zillow tab, and get up to welcome my guests. The sky is overcast and looks like it's about to rain, just like the night when all of this came out. Bring them in, I say, and I get ready to start anew. The spider's web in the corner of my office is empty now. Sometimes the best revenge is to let the truth do its work. 3 months later, after the divorce had dragged on through the winter and into the spring, I left Nathan's office and began working out of a series of temporary locations until I could find a new permanent home. I changed my routine, driving from one spot to the next, and avoided going anywhere that I might run into my husband. Still, when the date for our final mediation came up, I found myself heading downtown in the morning. I took the elevator up to the 14th floor of Morrison & Beck's law offices and got off when I reached the top. It had been a long 6 months, but I had finally made it. I was a little bit thinner than the last time I had been here, a bit worse for wear, but I had made it. Sarah was waiting for me in the lobby, a briefcase in hand instead of a folder. Ready? She asks, walking next to me. Ready as I'll ever be, I respond, straightening my tie, a new tie, one I bought just for today. Looking out from the conference room, I can see the city where my marriage fell apart. Laura is at the other end of the table, whispering to her attorney. She's wearing the pearl necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary. Mr. Cole, her lawyer Richardson says as we walk in. Mrs. Mitchell. Miss Howard, actually, Sarah corrects him, putting her briefcase down on the table with a little snap. She looks at me for a second, then looks away. She doesn't have the same attitude as before. Catherine takes out the last papers. Okay, let's do this. We spend the next hour doing the final paperwork. To be precise, Catherine continues, the condo downtown goes to Mr. Cole, as well as his full pension and investment portfolio. And for Mrs. Cole, Miss Warner, Laura says softly, almost like she's relearning her name. Miss Warner receives the agreed-upon settlement and her personal belongings, which have already been retrieved. I sign the final page. Alex, Laura says for the first time since we got here, do you mind if we have a quick chat? Would that be okay? She looks at me nervously, but I nod. 5 minutes, Catherine says, leading the others out. The door closes, and we're left alone with the view of the city where we used to live. Congrats on the promotion, Laura says, her voice a shadow of its former sophistication. Nathan's office has better windows, she winced at the name. I guess I deserve that. You deserve a lot of things. I know. I'm getting rid of the jewelry, by the way. She fiddles with the pearls around her neck. I'm selling it. Every piece. Smart. I imagine Mark's rent is pretty high. He left for Seattle last week. James is in Phoenix. Nathan's, who knows? It all worked out like a charm. Like dominoes, I say, remembering how precisely each secret came to light. Or maybe engineering, applying pressure until the structure collapses. She turns, and I see the woman I married for a second, peeking out. Were you ever going to confront us? Why? The truth was doing just fine. The cameras were all above board, every last one of them. She nodded. I should have known. You always were methodical. The door opened just then, and Catherine came back in. It's over, I say, getting to my feet. I burned it all. She picks up her purse, one of the few she has left. Goodbye, Alex. Goodbye, Laura. Sarah was waiting outside with a cup of coffee in each hand. She gave me one of them and said, to freedom, to truth, I replace her words, before drinking. A text message from the real estate agent. The house had sold to a young couple for more than the asking price. Dinner tonight? Sarah asks as we make our way to the elevator. Beth's in town. She's bringing her new boyfriend. Sorry, I already have plans. I'm thinking of celebrating my victory on my new balcony, watching the sunset with a glass of expensive scotch alone. That's what I feel like doing. We got down to the elevator. I was thinking about everything that happened, how Sarah had just gotten divorced. Beth's was on the way. 3 marriages destroyed due to one man's lies, but at least we had each other now. Alex, Sarah asks as we get to the lobby, are you happy? I think about that as we exit the building. I think I'm okay, I say at last. and I realize I mean it. We part ways on the corner, Sarah going to her new office, me to the park where I used to meet Mark for lunch. The trees have turned golden, their leaves carpeting the path where so many betrayals were planned. I find a bench and sit, watching people pass by, each carrying their own secrets, their own stories. My phone remains silent, no more desperate messages or legal updates needed. The afternoon light catches something in the corner of my eye. A spider's web strung between two branches, empty now but perfect in its geometry. I watch it wave gently in the breeze, remembering another web in another office, and smile. From my jacket pocket, I remove the last remnant of my old life, my wedding ring. It catches the light as I study it one final time before dropping it into the donation box by the park entrance. The soft clink as it falls sounds like the period at the end of a very long sentence. I walk on, leaving the past behind with each step.
All right, everyone's presentations are done, Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that?" "Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our IN's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the IN's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.